So hi, my name is Moni. I'm a graduate student in course 7, that's biology, and I am an IREFS. And so IREFS stands for Institute-Wide Resources for Easing Friction and Stress. It's basically a graduate student-based peer support group that's confidential. So today we're going to talk about something called active listening. And in that, we're going to do 3 things. 1, we're going to teach you a conflict management concept that's really key to understanding. And then 2, we're going to teach you a method in order to active listen. And then 3, we'll give you a larger process where this method fits into for coming together to figure out a solution that works for you and for multiple parties, anybody that you're involved with. So, 1, concept. In conflict management, we have something that we call position, and we have something we call interests. And so, what is a position? A position is a statement. I want X. I can't do Y. No, not Z. Or it's a statement, and you have no explanation of but why? What's going on? So it's binary. It's like a yes or a no, and you have no explanation. And so that's not really useful anywhere. And so in conflict management lingo, we want to move away from positions to interests. And interests are the why underlying a positional statement. If I can't do X, why can't you do X? What's important about X? Or I can't do Y. It's like, what's the motivation for Y or not doing Y? And so in any conversation where someone's making a case and you really want to understand them, you want to dig down to their interests, their values, their needs, and their motivations for the position they're expressing. So how do you get to positions? Interests. So that comes to part 2, which is the method. And so the method that you use in order to actively listen to someone and to figure out their interests is called the listening triangle. And as the name suggests, it's a triangle with 3 different steps that are really easy and simple to follow that let you get to the interests of anybody you're talking to. So here's the listening triangle, and it's 3 steps, and I'm going to go in the order starting from here with ask, but know that you can technically start from anywhere on this triangle, and what's really important is that you follow this in a clockwise fashion. And so starting from here, the first step of the listening triangle is to ask. Ask an open-ended question to the person you're talking to about what they're saying. And so an open-ended question is something like, tell me more about X. Why is Y important to you? What is it that doing Z or not doing Z gives you? The second step of the listening triangle is then to listen. And so listen to their answer, sit, be engaged, look like you care. And then the third step of the listening triangle is to reflect. And reflecting is important because you're making sure that the other person knows that you heard them. And you're also making sure that you understood what they were trying to tell you. So you get to confirm, make sure that you're not missing anything. And in reflecting, there's 3 ways you can do that. Starting with the simplest, which is repeating. Maybe not the entire thing of what they said, but if someone comes to you and is really angry about X, you can say, you're angry about X. And they would say, yes, I'm angry about X. You got this. You could paraphrase. Maybe they tell you an entire story. You say, got it. It sounds like X is giving you a lot of trouble. It's not their words, but you're sort of summarizing the general theme of what you heard. And again, they say, yeah, you did it. Last, you can reframe. And what this word means is you're going to listen to what the person told you, and you're going to take what you've heard and you're going to try to guess what their interests behind what they told you is. And so if they tell you a whole bunch of things about, I don't know, my roommate is really messy and I'm really upset, if you were reframing to figure out, well, what are their interests? You could say, all right, you're really frustrated by your roommate being messy. It sounds like cleanliness is important to you, that's a main interest of yours. Is that right? And they might say, yeah, that's totally right. Awesome. They might say, no, actually not. Fine. What is? You're gathering more information. It's fine if you're wrong, and there's no right way to do this. And the point is, again, to make them feel heard and to try to figure out what's their deal. What are their interests? And you repeat this as many times as you think is necessary to really get to the heart of what matters. In the roommate example I just gave, cleanliness really matters to you. Maybe fairness also matters. And if that's the only two things they keep mentioning as interests, I could pause and say, is there anything else? And if they say no, great. Mission accomplished. If not, wonderful. Repeat, rinse and repeat until you get everything. And that's how the listening triangle works. Simple, but deceptively hard to do. There are many ways we can do this wrong, but there are two really common pitfalls to trying to use the listening triangle method. And so one of them is that you ask great questions and you listen and then you forget to reflect. You just keep asking questions. You're like investigator mode. So forgetting to reflect is kind of huge. So don't do that. Remember, you want to make sure you understood them, because you don't want to do this and not have any sort of feedback on whether you actually understood the other person, and you want to make the other person feel heard. That's part of this process, to give them some space to express themselves. And so don't forget to reflect. A second common pitfall is that as you're doing this, you might start to think to yourself, I totally know the answer to this person's problems. I will now tell them how to solve themselves. And so a really common pitfall is to start going with faux questions, where they're not actually open-ended, but you're about to give a suggestion. Have you tried talking to X about this? Or what about, no, don't do that, don't do that. So remember, as you're doing this process, your one and only goal is to listen, ask questions, and understand. It is not your goal or motive at this point to solve anybody's problems. And so to hold yourself back if you feel the itch to solve and investigate, be lazy. That's not your goal. Your goal is just to listen, to gather information, and to be neutral about it. And so no judgment, hold yourself back. And so second common pitfall, do not troubleshoot. Don't do it. So getting from positions to interests, and then using the listening triangle to really understand whoever you're talking to's interests are, can just be the end goal for you in and of itself. Maybe you're just trying to have a conversation and figure out where somebody stands. What's cool about this is that you can use this process to really formally generate options and then pick a solution for something that you're trying to solve, be it dirty dishes, or a new grading scheme for your class, or whatever you want. And so what does that look like? So you would still need to move from positions to interests to do the listening triangle to really figure out what everybody else is interested in. Then you would communicate your interests so that everybody else also understands what you want out of whatever it is that you want to do. And then you would generate options. And so these are strategies that would meet your interests and everyone else's interests. And you would co-create that together with everybody involved. And you can do that because you've mined everybody's interests. You know what people care about. So you can say, well, I could think of this. And this meets my interest of blah, blah. And that meets your interest of blah, 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 blah. And so you can list out a whole bunch of options, A, B, C, discuss them, and then if you pick one that works for everybody, well, bam, you have a solution, you finish the process. And now you have to go on towards enacting it, and that's a whole nother ballgame, but great. You've come to an agreement with yourself and with everybody else present. So one really great question that you might be asking yourself is, well, this is cool. What if it's not my issue or topic? What if I'm listening to somebody else come to me and say, I'm having this discussion with person Z, and I need to come to an agreement with them? So you're third party. And so you can actually still use this process. You can listen to your friend, or whoever it is that came to you, and say, well, what's going on? Tell me more. What about this is important to you? Get their interests. And then from here, you'd be coaching them on how are they actually going to do this process themselves. And so then you'd be asking the question, well, what do you think the other person's interests are? How are you going to find that out? You could teach them this, tell them, why don't you ask them some open-ended questions? Be explicit about your interests, find out about their interests, and then together co-create some options that both of you can agree to. And that's how you would take this process and advise somebody else to do this in order to come to a solution. So one last thought I'd like to leave you with, which is that in presenting this material, I call this conflict management because that's sort of the umbrella term where I learned all these skills. But consider this, that being a great listener and being able to communicate effectively can also be described as leadership for alphas out there. Effective teamwork for everyone who's a beta, so teamwork, so cooperative. And could be conflict management for people like refs who think about approaching communication from the side of, well, there might be a conflict, how can we make this easier? And I just want to make an appeal that all of these are just different ways of labeling what is effective human communication, and that that's useful in an academic setting, in personal settings, in family life, in romantic relationships. It's basically useful life skills. And so while you're at MIT, to really think about trying to get these skills. It doesn't matter what you call it, but to get these kind of skills so that you can be an effective human being, so that you can rock life, be a boss, and that there are a lot of resources available to you at the Institute where you can gather and acquire these skills really explicitly or implicitly. And so to really think about trying to pick these things up. They're really great, they're really useful, and we don't often get them in the classroom setting. So, yes, please, effective communication. Make the world a better place. Make you a better person.